Hey guys, welcome back to 90s Obscurity. I have Vinnie Potestivo here. Did I say it right?
You nailed it.
I
Nailed it.
nailed it. I've been very stressed about pronouncing this,
Oh
butchering his last
no.
name.
Why? How about let me start off like I'm assuming I know it's Rachel Burke, but I'll call it Rachel
Mhm.
Burkey just to be that one person who just now do you feel better about
Like honestly, I have had people spell my last name like Berk, and I'm like, where did you grow up? Like, I
like
feel like it's a pretty common name,
I
right?
feel like if it was a name you put on like on a Starbucks coffee, maybe there'd be a little bit more of an exaggerated response
You
to
know,
it.
you know what's funny? You say
Tell
that the
me.
funniest I ever got was somebody. I got my receipt and they said they spelled my name Richard.
Oh yeah, well there you go. We'll just flat out
I
forget
was like,
about
do I look
yeah.
like a Richard?
That's
Oh
hysterical.
my
My
God.
iPhone calls me Bonnie. That I guess there's more Bonnies than Vinnies in this
Okay.
world. So if you try to write, by the way, if you have an iPhone, take out your iPhone right now and try Vinny, Vinnie. And if you don't have a
Oh
lot
my
of Vinnies in your world, it's going to change my name to Bonnie. So that's okay. If
oh
you
my
if you hit me up on social, I know the intent.
yeah.
It happens.
Oh my God. So guys, Vinny has done a lot. He actually reached out to me to come on the show, and I was already following him and knew who he was because he does a lot of stuff in the casting world too. So I know you worked for MTV as a talent exec for many years. You have your own podcast, you work as a media advisor. So we're going to talk about all of that.
Yes.
Um, Before we jump into it, just for anyone that's tuning in for the first time, basically this whole show is about all things 90s. I like to focus on these slightly obscure, so kind of the bands that weren't so popular that you may have forgotten about, or 90s films that were kind of underground that you've forgotten about too. So I am going to ask Vinny some of his favorite stuff from the 90s. So I'll surprise you with some questions.
Yes.
But first of all, so how are you? Thank you for
I'm
coming on.
great. Oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah,
so excited. By the way, and I love
good.
that. I love that we were already connected. I feel like
Mhm.
what I got to do at MTV in the late '90s and early 2000s, I really call on that a lot as a way of getting a return on energy. And I feel like there was a lot of content in media that I got to be a part of that you got to see, and everyone got to see that I got to see and
Yeah.
and and but I just have a different version of it and you have a different version of what happened, and I love learning about how it's impacted and changed the trajectory of conversations and communities. And I love making sense of what we did in the crazy 90s. I love making sense of it now, and I'm so, and what a great theme, by the way. Congrats. What a cool,
Well,
awesome
isn't
theme
it
to narrow in on.
Isn't it funny how like the 90s are totally back right now? Like I went to the mall the other day. I don't normally go to shopping malls, and I was at H&M and I felt like I teleported to the 90s. Like it was everything I wore in high school. I had to like check myself for a second where I was like, what year is it? Like how old am I? Because I feel like I time traveled. But it's like kids nowadays are wearing the Nirvana shirts and they're listening to everything that we grew up in. And I kind of started it because with Spotify, it's like I was rediscovering all these songs that I was like, oh my God, I forgot about these fantastic songs from the
Oh
90s that
yeah.
I listened to, or even movies or anything. So I think it's kind of a good theme where people are really into like throwbacks now. And now we're
And
at the age, unfortunately, where that's cool.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Where memory is cool, let alone
I
what we're
know.
capable of. I also think I don't know if you'd be able to do this 20 years from now and look back on 2022 the same way that we can look back in the 90s, because we had so many less distractions back then. Even just in preparation of this, I was thinking about like how TV has changed since the 90s. Like
And that was one of the things I was going to talk to you about, actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wanted to get into TV because I saw Fox get launched, and then I loved the Tracy Ullman show, and I loved The Simpsons, and I watched The Simpsons get lifted from the Tracy Ullman show and become its own series, and Fox News was just launching. Like I thought that was so cool that there could be a new channel. One new channel I thought was impressive, let alone the millions that we now have.
I know it's
Um,
almost overwhelming, but isn't it like it's so funny how, MTV in the 90s was all music videos and like that's what we look forward to. It's like you'd wake up and watch music videos and then it somehow turned into reality TV and like just
oops.
stuck.
Oops, I'm
I
sorry.
know. I know.
We'll
It's
talk
oh,
about that.
was that your fault?
I
Am I
would say
blaming you?
it's a collective. It's a collective. If I say I mean we, I promise.
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
say this about MTV. What we got right then, Unfortunately, we removed, music videos. We had a new platform for them, MTV2 and MTV.com, and there was new ways
Right.
that music videos were starting to be shared. And but we created storytelling space. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, we lost the music video on MTV, but we created a space for storytelling for the youth to have that wasn't available because social media wasn't available. Shared stories weren't available. Cribs, the idea of looking in someone's house, or high school stories, the idea of like the horrible things that go wrong in high school, or all the
Yeah.
other shows. That the storytelling wasn't available in mass media, on broadcast media, the way that it's wildly available now in narrowcast media, meaning like social media and podcast media and some of the other like sort of forms that have come to play.
Yeah. Well, it started kind of a phenomenon because reality TV really wasn't a thing. And now it's not just MTV, it's everywhere,
Yeah, yeah.
like every station, Bravo. And, now you have all of these shows. But I think it kind of started with the Real World, probably, right?
Thanks. There's a couple of formats that that I want that you can give a nod to. That I think the Waldens was one of the earliest sort of reality shows in the late 70s. Actually,
Oh,
CBS tried something, and there was some interesting casting, and is about a family you thought you knew that you didn't know, and there sure were some humdingers in there that were
okay.
certainly cool and eccentric back in the 70s. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Real World, I think that I, we give a lot of credit to Real World. I think the audience that was watching MTV should get the credit. Like they took that show and took it off of cable network and put it into our lives. And we talked about it at school, and we talked about it at the mall. And if I didn't know how to connect with somebody as a gay man, I could say, well, you ever seen that guy Norman on Real World? And that would kind of
Yeah.
be like the kicker for me, like the starter, where I was like, that guy Norman, who's, you know, kind of
Yeah.
like me in a lot of ways. I would kind of put it out there. And that show, I went to school and I learned about like acting, and I never wanted to be an actor. I learned about like acting and creating characters and creating archetypes and art, and so I understood the archetype casting that was important to the success of the Real World, which is like, we're going to take characters, we're going to put them in a semi-controlled environment. And they played around with that in a couple of different ways. Like sometimes some seasons they made them have a job and go to work. I don't know
I
if
do
you
remember that.
remember. Some seasons they were just allowed to be house guests and they did
And
nothing but
even
like,
even Jersey Shore did that. I think they had
yeah,
to
Jersey
go and
Shore
like
made them go
work.
do something. Yeah, they made
Right.
them sort of earn their keep. And then I think after a while the producers were like, if they don't go to work, I think we're going to get plenty of scene work from this cast. And there's going
Yeah.
to and the work the conceit for work is just a story engine. That just means like we're going to have a story to pull from, because when you go to work, you leave from work, there's going to be a story, one way or another, that you can pull from that device, that story, engine. But
Yeah.
I love what reality TV became, which was our ability to actively change our lives and then share it with people. And in that sharing, we're allowing people's perception of our reality to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't understand that until season 2 of most of the shows, Osbournes and Newlyweds and Punked, that I got to work on. And I didn't because we didn't have immediate feedback the way that you do now on social media. And I'll tell you what, we could have never written, Chicken Tuna of the Sea. That's like, you leave that to Jessica Simpson to come up with the brilliant stuff.
I
But
remember that.
um,
So tell me, I guess, exactly, or just for our listeners
yeah.
also, tell me exactly what you did for MTV and kind of how you got into that.
Oh, cool. So I left as one of the heads of talent and development at MTV. I was ultimately hired to help launch the talent development department in 1999 with a
Okay.
man named Rod Asa, who's currently the head of programming at NBC, Universal, globally, everywhere, or anything unscripted on any of those platforms owned by NBC. And my job initially was to create a talent development and casting department. So my background was in technology. I in the early 90s learned data management and how to transcode content and how to how to digitize content, and a lot of technical skills that sort of led to me being in casting. MTV didn't need a casting executive when they hired me. They had one, but they needed someone to make sure that I could build a system, a format, a template, a spreadsheet, a deck, a document. I was the person who would go around looking at everyone's Rolodexes and be like, you really need to put those in your contacts. Oh, contacts. No one uses contacts on their Microsoft Office. Back then
you were ahead of your time.
But that's what it was. In 98, I made a decision to be a casting director. I put out an ad while I was at school in October of 98, and I got about 500 headshots. I was overwhelmed. I created a database of them. And that database that allowed me to connect with the castings and stuff like that caught the attention of a producer that worked at Fox, who was working on Hannity and Combs. So I got hired by Hannity and Combs to travel the country with them and sort of like manage the audience. I was like an audience producer, so that I would like have to make sure 500 people showed up for a taping. That was like my job. But then I would go through those people and pick who would ask questions, which it sounds like, by the way, why would I like but politics is not my strong suit, or was nor was it my area of expertise. But empathetically, I approached it in a way that, like, if it made sense to me and the question made sense and stood to be answered in this room that we had at that present time, I would love to flag that for the producers. And I thought that was pretty cool that I could help people ask a question and find their voice and get their topic addressed in a show that I thought was pretty important to the conversation, the two sides of the conversation, ultimately that we only had back, sort of say that we had back then. I know we have a lot more sides to the conversation nowadays, which is why a show like that, I don't think, would work the way that it did back then. But yeah, but meeting those people and traveling with them and then having the ability to digitize content, wire two VCRs together. I was the guy who knew how to scan photos incorrectly. I could take things off of a hard drive and put them onto a floppy drive and put them onto a hard drive. And I can take beta and put it into like some weird, mundane tasks that I think saved my butt for all the layoffs that MTV had while I was there. Because I had some real hard technical skills that, and technology didn't change until like 07, the iPhone, Apple, can we maybe YouTube
and MySpace. That was when social media became a thing.
MySpace. Well, I was part of a small team at MySpace at Viacom, led by Tom Freston, who was one of the pioneers of MTV Networks. And there was a chance where MTV could have purchased MySpace, and it was decided not to, and then ultimately that decision was frowned on, although obviously I think
it did kind of become more music based at one point.
Because they invested in Justin Timberlake, and they tried to get that, like, they tried to get it going, and Justin, also you have to keep in mind, Justin and then those artists back then leaned on social media for their own success. So there was an invested interest in an artist-led social media platform, because Napster, set the tone for what LimeWire had to, sort of deal with. Right. Like, we're not talking about mixtapes anymore. This is like, sharing on a whole nother level. So, I love that. And that was sort of like my jam. Like, I was like in the 90s in high school and in college, like I don't know if I'm just going to, Blockbuster's not going to come get me now, but I would go and like rent a tape from Blockbuster. I would dupe it, and then I would air it in school. So I never sold it. But as the class president, I had these events where we were always doing public viewings of like movies that everyone wanted to see. And I had my hands on the movies because I knew how to record them and save them until it was time, to show them. And I promise you, I never went around selling DVDs of movie. Like, I'm not like a box. I don't got like 15 Little Mermaid VHSs burning a hole in my closet somewhere.
I know. Oh, I have a whole collection from the 2000s of all DVDs. It's like literally every movie from the 90s, and I would rip them from like those torrents online, because it's just.
And you would lick those stamps. Like the stamp book that they like.
Oh my, well, it's just when you're young, you don't think of like, I'm ripping off someone's work, you're just like,
No,
cool, a free copy. And then you're older and you're like, oh God, I have all these like illegal DVDs. I probably shouldn't have done that.
I should probably delete my Napster file off of my
Right.
desktop, right?
Yeah.
But
So
what I
what?
loved
So,
about Napster,
mm,
Napster got people excited about sharing music in a way that
yeah.
no one was excited about sharing music. And to be honest, the music videos, music videos were, in my understanding, is music videos were kind of created by MTV. Like it wasn't like there was a
Mhm.
lot of music videos beforehand. So MTV gave money to
Yeah.
labels so that they could have begin creating music videos, and then we would get to air them because we paid for them. And then that turned into like we paid for them, so we want rights to them. And then it turned into we have access to like it first, and then the labels were like, stop giving us money because
Yeah.
we want to have more options with what we do with our videos. And
Right.
so
Right.
videos themselves were changing. The business of music videos were changing. For example, in the late 90s, labels realized that they can start integrating products and brands into music videos to offset the
Mhm.
cost. But then also
Oh,
MTV was carrying the burden of showing those brands on a network where those brands didn't pay directly. So there was it's an interesting business unit. Those
yeah.
those music videos they became. So I think ultimately the format itself was and it's fairly young. I'm right. In 81, MTV came out. So like maybe
Yeah.
20 years music videos. They had a nice run.
Yeah.
They're still doing
So
it.
on that subject, I want to ask you a very important question.
Yeah.
What was your favorite music video from the 90s?
Oh, well, can it be mine? Can it be one that I got to catch? It's going to be one that
Sure.
it's going to be, it's not right, but it's okay. Because that's the video that launched my entire MTV career.
Okay.
Whitney Houston's It's Not Right. It's not
Hmm.
right, but it's okay. And
Was that from the 90s?
yeah, 99.
Oh, okay. I
98.
was
I'm
I
sorry, 98. Because here's the story. I was walking in the streets in Times Square, and the casting director asked me if I wanted to ask Whitney Houston a question. I was going to ask Whitney. Her and Mariah just finished doing the Prince of Egypt soundtrack. So that was
Oh.
about to be a VMA moment. Like that ended up being like a big iconic VMA moment they did there. And the producer had me ask this question: what was it like recording the Prince of Egypt soundtrack with Mariah? So I practiced, and Ananda Lewis, the MTV VJ, came over and she worked with me, and I got excited to talk. And then when they brought Whitney out and they started showing, I saw the producers pointing the directions. And then they tell Whitney, they go, that's the guy. He's going to ask you, well, what was it like recording with Mariah Carey? And she goes, I'm not answering that question. And I was like, no, my dreams, no, all my dreams are being crushed right now.
Is
So,
it
so
is
it,
it because she didn't have a good experience?
it's because she is not talking about that topic. It's just that is and ain't that ever a Whitney Houston response, by the way. She's like, no, let's find something better to talk about then.
Oh, that's funny.
And I struck a relationship with her and the people, and she was like, look, we're actually casting It's Not Right, a music video. If you know anybody who would be right for it, let me know.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. And I said, well, I can give you 50 people if you want.
Yeah.
Let me know what you're looking for. I have a database of actors and singers and dancers, and I'm connected to the creative community here in New York, and I'm 20, and
Hmm.
I know like a lot of young people who would love to be in something like this. And they were like, would you want to be a casting assistant on it? And I was like, well, I'm not an idiot. You're gonna have to pay me at least $100. you know and that's what they
Yeah.
paid me, and I was happy to send them people who were happy to be in that video. And
Okay.
that's where the bug bit deep.
Ah,
Was
okay.
when you're part of a pop culture phenomena. I mean, that's like my grandma probably even got to watch that video one way or another. I felt like
Right.
that's big to be a part of that.
Yeah, I always loved the Aerosmith videos with Alicia Silverstone because I was at that age where it's like we all
Yes,
looked up to her and like
yes.
we thought she was so rebellious and cool.
But you always knew like you had like 10 minutes until the song was done. Like they were like long, like, oh man, this is gonna take up the entire break. There's no way they're gonna play. I would
Oh,
think there's no way they're gonna play another music video in between commercials. It's Aerosmith.
yeah.
It's like a 10-minute. That blind melon.
Oh, yeah. No rain.
Like yeah, no rain. Like that was probably that was kind of like when I was in semi-charmed, kind of like the Third Eye Blind, thinking like
Yep.
I'm like, literally, it's all rushing back.
Sure. Like Black Hole Sun, I remember was such a weird one. Like that was the
Yeah,
creepiest music
it
video
was, but it
ever.
was like the coolest music video. It was
Yeah.
like there was
Yeah.
nothing similar to that at all.
Nothing. Right.
No, at
I always
all.
think of that in like Madonna's bedtime story. Like that was
Oh
a weird
yeah.
one too.
Yeah. Well, you're not talking. Yeah. So I graduated high school. I graduated high school in '95, which is also the year that
Okay.
Clueless came out. So like,
Oh yeah.
but Clueless is about high school seniors. Like I'm kind of like, right. That's my track. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I was 2000, so I was a little behind
oh,
you,
2000.
but
Yeah. You
oh,
weren't.
Clueless changed everything.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that it's just like stands the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about your podcast too, because I mean, I looked up your podcast and I was like, God, he just had like Mandy Moore on and Christina Milian, like all these like 90s
Yeah.
phenomenons, right? Like I was like Topanga from Boy Meets World.
Oh my
So
gosh.
are these just people that you met working at MTV and you just still have relationships with?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a podcast. It's called I Have a Podcast. And
Yeah.
the idea of the podcast was to be, I'm really clunky about it. Like I have a
Okay.
podcast. It's a podcast. I have a podcast on TV, which is the name of my syndicated television show that I converted the podcast into. And then I have a podcast.com, a platform for podcast discovery. I'm really clunky with it because I just want people to be able to track all the different things that I'm
Uh-huh.
doing with it. But my podcast is about my personal experiences creating over the last 25, almost 30 years, the
Okay.
careers that I've gotten to change and the ones that have changed mine. So I was terrified when I launched my podcast. I know way too much.
Oh,
I've
okay.
been in it way too long. We know too much. We overthink it. We overanalyze it. We over edit it. So I thought to myself, if I just rip off the Band-Aid and have like Jamie Lynn Sigler and Danielle Fishel and Mandy Moore and Suchin Pak and all my favorite
Yeah.
TJ Lavin and all my favorite people around me, then I'm not going to think it's a podcast. I'm going to think it's a Zoom and like I can get in that headspace.
And it's
B,
like just it's a conversation with someone you know?
yeah. Like then I'm not like trying to explore and figure out talk points. I'm just trying to be like, wait, what did we do? And
Right.
then I'm like, Mandy, and then you got the phone call to do that Disney movie and you took it. And I was like, why are you going to leave MTV? You think that like Princess Diaries is going to take your level to the next career? Like this is the conversation I can have only with Mandy because I had access to that information and those experiences back then. And it's kind of fun to relive
Yeah.
now those experiences without talking about ex-boyfriends. That's like the trickiest
Yeah.
thing about my podcast. I don't like talking about people's exes because everyone's married and has kids now. So we're all
Okay.
through it. We all got through it. And
Yeah, well, I know you
um
have to be careful of what you ask people. So I actually I was a music journalist when I lived in Boston years ago, and
ooh,
I had to interview Tegan and Sarah, and I was like, I am not going to ask about their sexual orientation because every other journalist asks about it, and I'm like, they're probably so sick of answering these questions. So it's like I just made it about the music, and other things,
yeah.
and like we had such a great conversation because you don't want to ask the same questions everyone else is asking. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. And they don't want to answer the same questions that everyone else is answering. Yeah, I totally
Right.
agree with you on that. Yeah,
Right. Right.
it's funny. It's the sexuality for me, as a gay dude in the late 90s, first and foremost, I know MTV is kind of fun and cool and liberal, but it was Viacom. I mean, it's a Viacom as a publicly traded like company. It was not like
Yeah.
cool to be. I mean, it was accepted to be out, and there were a handful of out employees at MTV at the time.
Okay.
There's a couple of conversations I had with on-air talent that identified, but I opted not to bring that part of their life to the public, mostly because of the fear of being fired or being worked out of the system. I mean, to be
Mhm.
honest, television comes from advertising. So if you watch like any of these John Hamm series, you know what advertising is and the sort of energy that
Yeah.
comes around. And MTV in the late 90s and early 80s, and the late 90s especially, they made no apologies to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They kind of almost stood by
Right.
it. And like
Yeah.
that's the part that's what I stepped into, where I was like, y'all need to stop like glorifying the sex, drugs, and rock and roll days, like because that's not so cute, to be really honest. And you're all like 50, 60-year-old men with like daughters and families and children and sons,
Right.
and like, and you're not,
Yeah.
and you don't get it. I would think to myself, I would think,
Ye
this is like what. So So
Yeah.
I love the storytelling that we got to do, because I felt like we were a little late to get to share some of those stories. So
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Well, I also
Osbourne's
feel
and
like I feel like the real world too was probably one of the first, because we didn't really diversify back then, right? You didn't
mm-mm.
really see gay people on TV or people of different nationalities. And I feel like the real world was really the first show where they would talk about, like gay relationships and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with you. I feel like there were shows in the 90s where minorities were represented in the mass. So meaning
Hmm.
like you only saw like like a nuclear black family or gay friends, but there was
Right.
never an amalgamation
Hmm.
of what everyone was sort of experiencing.
Yeah.
And in some ways, people didn't like that about real world, because it felt like it was the producers were setting people up, you know, to fight. They would look for the homophobic Mormon, and then they would
Sure.
find the, you know, the extroverted homosexual who identifies and is able to. But I think that to be honest, that's how, as a producer, as a reality producer in this world that I stepped into, that's where
Yeah.
I show up. That's where I go, well, where can I get this conversation? And I cast people knowing, or I think I know what their potential is, what their point of view is, and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
There's two sort of things I'll look for in a reality person. One is that they are quick to make a decision and slow to change their minds. That's like
Yeah.
sort of rule number one for me. Quick to make a decision,
Yeah. Yeah.
slow to know where you stand, but just know change is coming one way. Either you got to change or they're changing and you don't realize it.
Hmm.
And like that's something you've really got to figure out.
Yeah. So what made you want to start a podcast? Just curious.
um, so I think that in my late 30s, I went through this phase where I made myself in some ways smaller so that I could work with
Okay.
larger talent and larger businesses and larger brands.
Okay.
Um, by the way, even if you just listen to the last few minutes of this, like I worked with some awesome people in the beginning of my career.
Oh, same. Yeah.
I wasn't, and I certainly wasn't little Vinny back then. I had bravado, and if Ashton Kutcher was wearing it, I was wearing it. If
Nice.
Carson Daly was wearing it, I was wearing it. And I
Hmm.
loved sort of being a chameleon amongst all the groups, especially because I felt finally, for the first time, I felt like I was part of something, and I was able to show up. And what made me unique in the room wasn't my sexuality, and it wasn't
Okay.
I wasn't the joke, and I wasn't the guest. I was able to provide value by bringing a unique opportunity on a multitude of channels. Like I got to MTV when MTV became MTV, MTV2, MTVU, MTV.com, MTV3, MTV UK, MTV Polska. I mean, we franchised out, and I got to write the SOP, I got to write the standard operating procedure for the talent development department for a global brand like MTV
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
attacks pop culture in a very local way. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was able to show up with opportunity
Okay.
with people back then. And if I would have focused on the casting piece, if it would have been transactional, then that would have worked for me. But I think that would have just like made me only have kept me a casting director, or may have just like not allowed me to have the connection and relationships that I ended up having with people, because I wasn't the person who was going around saying, "Hey, I'm casting a new host for all things rock. I need, you know," I was the guy who was going to rock shows, and then people would be like, "Where do you work?" I'm like, "Oh, I work at MTV, and we're hosting, you know, we're casting, we're looking for the new face of all things rock. If you know someone, let me know." But I would
Yeah.
never proactively reach out and start making phone calls and asking people. And this is bad, because this is like casting 101, is like, you go look for what you're searching for. And I was like, wait, what? There's billions of people in this world.
Well, it
And
sounds like you're just a good networker,
that's what
and
it
it
was. I
happens.
was like, you want
Right.
me to find the person? Oh, hell no. But I'll find 100 people. And if they can find 10 to 20 people each, then maybe we'll get there. And that's where I
Yeah.
believe
But
in the law of abundance.
yeah, I think if you're a good networker, that just happens organically. It
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
you didn't even have to go looking for it. It just kind of came to you.
It feels that way, but I really appreciate you saying that. I didn't know I was doing that back then. I didn't know
Okay.
that was good, you know, practices. So
Sure.
if I could teach someone how to be, you know, a good networker, it's never to lead with the opportunity. it becomes transactional. It's
Yeah.
just a jump off point, a jumping off
Okay.
point for where it is now. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I know you help people build their brands. You have this whole media company, you do some casting stuff, you help people grow their podcast. So I guess tell me a little about that because it looks like you do a lot.
Oh gosh, thanks. I do the same thing. I help people stand out.
Hmm.
And if they become famous after working with me or become more relevant or more discoverable,
Okay.
then so be it. But I really enjoy helping people stand out.
Okay.
I think that for a while, having your likeness or having your voice or having representation was sort of enough, but you have the ability to own your own content now. Your podcast, for example, you don't own TV shows. Networks own TV shows. Like you don't own the TV
Right.
show. Nick Cannon doesn't
Yeah.
own Wild 'N Out. Like he had to sell that sucker to MTV. And then it's commissioned and it's ad driven. So he's kind of told what to do with his own project. And I think that we have the
Yeah.
ability now to own our own projects. So I'm really passionate about helping founders, founder-led businesses,
Okay.
people who identify as having talent brands, or maybe they're actors or journalists, people who are just looking to be more discoverable. And I like
Okay.
helping them win awards.
Cool.
I like helping them give credit and take credit, especially on IMDb. You can get awards for years, you can only get IMDb credit if you're an actor in a movie or in a TV series or in
Uh-huh.
an unscripted TV series. So reality, scripted, or films were the only like media genres.
Hmm.
Podcasts is a legit genre now. So it's a
Oh wow.
genre. So like you you're a producer and a writer and a host. These are important credits, not only that you worked hard for, but you earned. And someone out there in Google world could be looking for podcast producer 90s podcasts
Okay.
and also award-winning 90s podcasts. If there tends to be a lot of podcasts about this, I might want to look for people who've already found a way to rise above and sort of put their flag in the field and be proud about the content that they're creating. I love working with teams that have that
Yeah.
level of pride. And awards are tricky. Some people think there's like Grammy people who walk around the industry handing out awards, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, for example, the Academy Awards, you have to pay to be in the Academy. You have to qualify. And then you have to
Right.
pay a fee, an annual fee to be in the Academy. And then you pay per credit, per video, per category for the
Mm.
chance to be nominated in your category. And then you have to campaign depending on.
Okay.
So awards are, and some awards are not as complicated. Some awards, there's some really cool awards, the W3 awards, the Communicator awards, Telly awards. There are cool awards now for podcasters where they're not pitting you against each other,
Hmm.
but the top 60% will place in silver and the top 10% will place in gold. And we're all judged on the same 5 categories fairly against ourselves. And then whoever, so I love, there's lots of different ways, but
Okay.
I love helping people become award-winning communicators, whether you're a journalist or a lawyer or an accountant.
Hmm.
Because if I needed an accountant on a TV show to walk through A to Z, I'm probably going to look at podcasters because they are great communicators. They research, they
Hmm.
understand production schedules, they know publishing
Yeah.
schedules. That's
Sure.
a nice breed. In fact, I'll tell you what, podcasters have a lot, especially if you can create and make your own. I mean, I know in TV journalism, being able to be your own producer and creating your own package and editing, it's a mandate, if not, direct way to. I'm thinking about Sujin Pak and Gideon Yago at MTV News. Like they were awesome producers, and they
Yeah.
didn't start as being producers, but they jumped into it. That's what they wanted that
Yeah.
opportunity to be, and that was cool.
Yeah. And I feel like if you're good at something, it kind of finds you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and yeah, if you're really, and then if they find you and you're good at it, then they'll let you keep finding it, and they'll let you keep
Yeah,
producing,
yeah.
especially
Because like my
producers
first,
like
my
that.
first, my first job out of high school was at like a call center, and then like
Mine
the recruiter
too.
was, oh really? But
Yeah.
the recruiter was fired one day, and they were like, "You're going to be the new recruiter." And then I started realizing, after time, I was like, yeah, I am actually pretty good at interviewing people. And when I started podcasting, I didn't even put those two together because I worked in music journalism too. And it's like my whole life has just been interviewing people. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I
Well,
guess this just keeps.
we kind of remove our voices. We remove
Mhm.
our voice in conversation from
Sure.
the narrative, and we're usually editing it in a way that leaves just the subject, the person that we've been talking to have their own voice. I agree with you. And by the way, I was maintenance agreements for new products at Sears. That was my jam.
Oh,
I
sorry.
can sell a maintenance agreement on a new product.
Oh my
It
God,
was the
too
worst. It
funny.
was the worst job ever. Hey, this is Vinnie Potestivo calling from Sears Maintenance. We're calling about the new washer and dryer. And then she's like, I don't have a new washer and dryer. I've been asking my husband for 2 years for a new washer. Hold on a second. And then the husband gets this one. Thanks for ruining it. I was like,
Oh no.
my job sucks.
You're the guy that
Y'all
you're the guy
told
that
me
they
this
make,
was the good list.
you're the guy they make fun of in the TikTok buddies when they're like, we've been trying to
Yeah.
reach you about your extended warranty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's funny. Actually, I have to remember that next time I hear one of those. I was like,
Yeah,
I was you,
that's
guy.
me.
I was you.
Mhm. All right. So, what was your favorite kind of obscure 90s band? I love talking about like slightly obscure bands. So,
Oh
no
yeah.
Pearl Jams, no Nirvanas, more of like the Everclears of the world.
Ooh, this is. I mean, I gotta be honest. I was kind of like. I don't know if this is good or bad, but this is just what
It's
it was.
okay.
I was kind of. It was kind of a Depeche Mode. I was like,
That's great.
yeah, I was kind of like, yeah, that was like, I loved Depeche Mode, Savage Garden in the late
Savage
90s.
Garden. So many people say Savage Garden
Do
when I ask them
they?
that question.
I
People
got
love Savage Garden.
goosebumps. I
Yes.
love Savage Garden, by the way. That's so funny. I didn't know how much I loved music.
Okay.
And I don't know if I mean, I love being in music. It's exciting. Um,
Probably felt
uh,
like work to you.
yeah, it felt, well, um, I'm just not good at the lyrics.
That's okay.
I'm like a melody kind of guy.
Yeah.
And you know how some people make up words to get there with however the
Oh,
songs are
oh.
there. I'm that guy. I'm like, I'm okay to make up a word and think
Or I
that's
think, or I'll think a song my whole life is one lyric, and then I get
yeah,
older and I'm like, no, they're
no
saying
way.
that. Yeah, that
I'm
song,
never
Betty, when you.
watching pop-up video again, ever.
I know. Well, that song from the 80s, like Betty, when you call me Al. Like when I was a
Yeah.
little kid, I thought he was saying call meow like a cat. So like
Come,
into adulthood, I was singing meow, and then like the words came on the screen one
oh
day,
my
and I went,
gosh.
no, it's
Wait,
Al. His name's Al.
you know,
No.
in Nirvana, at the end of Nirvana, I think he says all we know is all we are. I think are the actual
Yes.
all we know is all we are. It's the
Oh,
lyrics.
we,
And I
yes, we
thought the
all are.
lyric,
Yes.
yeah, all we know. And I thought the lyrics were, oh no, insomnia. Like he's like writing a song up at night and he's trying to finish it. He wants to finish it so bad. He's just like,
Yeah.
I just can't fall asleep. I have insomnia. Oh no, insomnia. Like it made sense to me.
Yeah. And it's kind of fair too, because I feel like in the 90s, everyone kind of mumbled. It's
Yeah,
like we
yeah.
have this joke like Eddie Vedder. It's like you just like I think there was in that
Oh
movie
yeah.
Ted with Mark Wahlberg, and they were like, you just mumble vowels. You're like,
Yeah.
and then that's like, you don't know what anyone's saying.
It was
Do
fun.
you
It was
have
fun times. Fun
it
times.
was. I have such like clearly I have the show, but I have such a soft spot for, 90s pop culture. Do you have a favorite like underground 90s movie that maybe people had forgotten about? Like I always think of
Oh
like the
yeah.
Basketball Diaries or Train Spotting. There were some like weird movies in
Basketball
the 90s.
Diaries. I auditioned for
Remember
Basketball
that?
Diaries. Yeah, of
Really?
course. Yeah, I auditioned.
Nice.
I got stopped by a talent scout in my high school to be to mean that was like a thought. Uh I don't, what, I gotta be honest. For some reason, I want to say the movie that scared the crap out of me, like I was terrified of, Philadelphia. That movie was like with Tom Hanks, and it was about
I re- I
AIDS and
I don't know if I ever actually saw that.
It was like that movie was like, what was going on in the early 90s too, just again as like a gay dude and things,
Yeah.
how quickly media was portraying certain stories or how stories were being introduced. I just remember Philadelphia being one of those movies where I was like, oh man, this is one of those like, well, I'll tell you what, I sure was good. I was a good boy.
Yeah, I mean, we had some dark
It
one,
worked.
like Requiem for a Dream was so dark. I
Oh, so
remember, and it
dark.
like, yeah, it's still like I get like a funny feeling when I think of it. Like they had definitely had some like dark movies back then.
Did Jim Henson have like a dark 90s movies? Didn't he
Yeah,
have
the
like
Dark Crystal.
yeah, of course.
Mhm.
Well, there you go.
That's like a movie that like people take mushrooms and watch to this day.
That's what I hear. That's what my friend said.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know from personal experience.
Yeah, no, that might be like 80s, I think, but it still qualifies for sure.
Could have been, yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a little bit of a gray area. So let's do some social media plugs. So tell everybody your social media plugs for,
I guess I thought we were going back
company.
to the 90s. I was like, my first AOL handle was Vinster19. I thought I was 19 years old. I thought it was like I'm born in 1977, so I thought I was going to stick around. I thought Vincer19 was brilliant. Do you remember your first handle, your first instant messenger?
I think it has always been the exact same thing, and it still is to this day. And now we're at the age where we don't want people knowing the year we were born, right? Because it was always just like my initial and my birthday. It would be like RB 101182. And then to this day, that's still like, I know, and it's still like my Gmail because I just don't feel like changing it. But now I'm like, I don't think I really want
just like throwing your bank account PIN number in there while you're at it. Like,
that's what everyone says.
Right?
They're like, Rachel, never create passwords.
Oh my gosh. And then so, but I appreciate the question. So by the way, and I was It's Vinny for a while on social because we had to come up with like cute names, like that was like the challenge. But I'll say this, I'm now at Vinnie Potestivo. It's just my old regular name. But also I hurry up and I grab my name because, we're so lucky that we should be in this first wave of social media that no one else beyond us. They're always going to be, RB 5252.422225. So you just keep your numbers fine. It'll
and I have a common last name too, so it's like I will never get my name. I should have like changed it at some point, but
well, then you have to be first on every single platform moving forward, and that's like
I know.
And my name is horrible enough to spell, but I would say this way: for people looking to connect with me, go to Rachel's page and like look through her friends for a guy named Vinny, and then I'm that one.
There you go.
Dude, Vinny.
Yeah.
With the pink picture, and I love LinkedIn. I love Twitter. I love working with my friends. So I'm very happy to say hi and what's up. And
your podcast handle is just I Have a Podcast, right?
My handle is I Have a Podcast. Yeah, or you can visit us at ihaveapodcast.com.
All right. So people would reach out to you if they're trying to basically, I guess, grow their own brand, grow their podcast.
If they're looking to stand out, if they're looking to figure out what's the best media project to take on right now, if it should be a podcast, if it could launch as a television show, if it's something that's earned, if it's something that's paid, what are some of the segments that can be created in that format so that if you're creating a podcast, you're building in the workflow that's distributed to broadcast or main news, terrestrial radio. I like working on distribution and amplification. In TV, we don't create a show and then not know how we're going to promote it. Like we know how we're going to promote it well before we even create it, and that's different. That's almost we do that differently as creators now. So I like sort of bringing that up so that we can pre-purpose some of the creative that we know we need to amplify our projects and bake that into the series. And I use that, and it's challenging and it's fun. And that's what makes it fun, is that it's challenging, is that you think, well, how do I gamify the 90s? And, what or maybe, for example, maybe for a minute, you could just this or that, this band or that, gosh.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what I think I would remember. Who knows?
Backstreet Boys or NSYNC? Which one?
NSYNC. Back then, Backstreet, but now NSYNC.
I mean, I love both, but I think I
Yeah,
was always a little biased towards NSYNC. Yeah.
that's
Because
okay.
they had some good, well, I guess Backstreet did too, but they had some good like fun ones, but also some slow ballads that I really liked.
So are you Britney or Christina Aguilera?
Oh, Britney.
Britney or Jessica Simpson?
Britney. Yeah. I love Christina though too. I mean, vocally, she's I mean, a powerhouse,
Oh yeah,
but Britney just does everything where I mean, she just has such a stage presence
yeah.
where you could just watch. I mean, she's a great dancer, she has a fantastic just figure. She's beautiful. She just has such a presence to her that it's like you could just watch her all day. I feel like she can
Yeah.
do anything.
Wait, I like this 90s game, like Brandy or Monica. Like this could get
Oh,
fun. Like this could get
actually,
like,
Monica.
are you
I
really?
just yeah, I just rediscovered Monica had this song called Street Symphony that was really like slow and beautiful
So
off
good.
of that album with, like Angel and all of that. And I have it on a playlist now and I've been listening to it. Yeah, I actually loved Monica. I know. Surprising
I'm like,
answer.
this is wait, this Beck or Nirvana. Well, I guess.
Oh, Nirvana always.
Yeah.
Nirvana was actually my favorite 90s band of all time.
Oh
But I
yeah.
think I think a better question would be Nirvana or Pearl Jam. I feel like people are
Yeah,
either
yeah.
Nirvana or Pearl Jam people.
That's true. I was a Nirvana
Yeah.
over Pearl Jam. I'm a Nirvana guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That and I know where I fall. I
Yeah.
like that. Who'd be equivalent to like yeah, I like this idea. I want to come back. I want to come back and think about this. This is fun to think. It's fun
Yeah. Or
now.
it's like Whitney or Mariah would be good. I know
Yeah.
they probably are more 80s, but
I would be Team Whitney
same,
still. I would still,
same.
even except for
But
during maybe Christmas time, I might change my answer just because I'm getting Mariah
it,
washed. But
I know. So do you know Mariah actually has a higher octave range than Whitney? I discovered this on a plane. I
oh,
used to do music trivia. They would have games, and I thought it was Whitney, and I bet Whitney, and I was wrong. It was Mariah.
oh, whoa,
They've got to be close though.
very close.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That I know there's always a quite a duo, and I just recently got to see Elvis. I think it comes out very soon this week,
Nice.
but I recently and I was blown away by
Okay.
how Baz Luhrmann put this movie together. I love that like the songs, sometimes when they're singing in movies, it can be really distracting. And I just thought that
Yes.
everything about this movie was done brilliantly. And I had no clue about Elvis's story or the things that
I don't
limited
either.
him.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you that Tom Hanks is in the movie.
Oh well.
And the reason I say that is because then people go, well, who does Tom Hanks play? And I'm like, oh, he plays the manager. And then you'll say, well, what does the manager have to do with it? I'm like, well, if Tom Hanks played the role, then trust me, something happens. So
Yeah.
it's a
Oh yeah.
great
Well.
movie. And like, just to understand music back then too, the bookings he was passing, I don't want to give anything, what he accepted, what he
Yeah.
didn't accept, why he accepted things, how it brought back this level of nostalgia. You talk about the 90s that where we could go places and have them not be documented, but still change the reality of that space because the energy was, that's why you had to be there. Like that's in the 90s. I had to go out on Tuesdays to find out what the DJs were playing. We would end up playing that on MTV by the end of the week. I needed to get
Right.
ahead of the curve. And
Yeah. So.
Elvis brings up this too of like just how much music brought us together and how
Mhm.
we were willing to travel the lengths that we were willing to travel to go experience it too.
Yeah. Well, I follow Riley Keough, who is his granddaughter. She's Liz
Yeah,
Marie's daughter, and she's a fantastic actress. And she is actually. Have you read the book Daisy Jones and the Six? Or have you heard that they're
I
making this a
haven't.
show?
No.
So there was a best-selling book. It's the best book I've ever read. And it's about a band in the 70s that becomes famous, and the two singers are basically in love with each other. But it's fictional, but it sounds like it's a real band and a real story. And everyone Googles this band afterwards, and they're like, "Oh my God, they're not real." So Riley Keough is going to play Daisy,
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
she's one of those actresses that she can play anything. Like she can just do anything. She's amazing. But she said, "I don't know if I can sing." And they were like, well, we can't cast you unless you can sing because Daisy is a
Yeah.
singer. And so she took voice lessons for one weekend and
Oh
came back
wow.
and like blew them away, and they casted her. and I was like, oh, it's gonna be so good.
I love that story.
I'm so pumped for it. Yeah.
And the Madonna movie is, I think, now headed into production. It seems like they
Cool.
finally cast the woman to portray her. I think they had like this like casting camp where they whittled it down to about like 5 actresses that were going to play her, and then they had like music lessons and dance lessons. And
Yeah.
do you know who ended up getting her spot? Do you know who ended up
No.
the woman? Did you see Anna Delvey? Did you see
Yeah.
this is
Yes.
the woman who played Anna Sorkin?
No
And
way.
yeah, she's gonna be, I forget her name right now, and she's in
I know. I think it's Julie. Is it Julie or something?
yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I hate not knowing people's names.
I
but-
actually feel like I did see a clip of that
Julia
on Instagram.
Gardner. Yeah, Julia Gardner.
Yes. Yeah, she's great because she was in Ozark too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And luckily now that sigh of relief for Ozark, because that was a wonderful series. It was great to see Jason Bateman in a fun role like that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to what this cast does. That whole cast, what a talented cast. It was a cool moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I bet she's gonna kill it.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat, right? It's neat to think of these like iconic art. It's weird that we're at the age where the people we grew up to as kids are now being iconicized in the way that they are. And I guess the cool part about it is that in the past, I don't think those talent got to be a part of their biopics and their life story the same way that Elton John and Madonna, and I can think of all the
Freddie
artists.
Mercury.
Yeah, well, yeah, Freddie. Yeah, he didn't get a chance to craft his story, but this opportunity that you can, I know but if you loved that story with Freddie Mercury, then you will love what they did with Elvis. They did.
Oh yeah.
Something super
good.
Awesome.
All right. Well, everybody, we got to watch
Big thumbs
Elvis
up.
now. You've talked me into it because I actually, when I saw Rocketman, I was a little disappointed because I didn't know that it was a musical. Like I thought his story was interesting, but it's funny for someone who loves music as much as I do. I'm not big into musicals. I feel like when they just bust into song, it kind of like interrupts the story, and I'm just like I want to get back to the plot, you know. But I felt like in both.
I like that you said it that way instead of like, when they start talking and then it bursts into the song and it like ruins the.
Yeah, because I feel like in Bohemian Rhapsody, they did it where it wasn't a musical. It's just they'd cut to a scene of them in the studio or playing live, and then it was cool. But I don't want to listen to like a whole song like start to finish. Yeah, where you're like frolicking in the street singing, like not my thing.
I'm a cool guy. I'm gonna get it.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's my voice. You will love Elvis then for that reason.
All right, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Got to see Elvis now.
All shook up. I know you come out like shaking too. I turned to my boyfriend. I was like, I know we're gonna end up listening to Elvis a lot this weekend. So
and the guy who plays him, I'm spacing on his name right now, but Butler? He was in Austin Butler. Is that it?
Yeah, Austin Butler.
Yeah. He was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Did you see that?
Yes.
He's been in a lot because I first saw him. He was in the Carrie Diaries. It was like the spinoff of the prequel to Sex and the City.
Yeah.
And he was like Carrie's like high school boyfriend. That was the first time I had seen him. And now it's like, I was like, wow, he's in a Tarantino film. He's killing. And now he's Elvis. I'm like,
now he's
Elvis
killing it. Film. By the way, I have this like weird thing also where I have like just I don't know. This is rude to say, but I have bad TV taste also. So I love watching weird sci-fi things. He was in something called the Shannara Chronicles on MTV. So it's MTV. It wasn't when I was there, so it was cool. It was like it was cool. It was on MTV, and it was like maybe just a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago. But he played like a swordsman in the elf world, and it was kind of like very not, not very straight and serious, like, and heavy, so to speak. But it's not distracting at all. It's a beautiful. I mean, and then Tom Hanks is just captivating in the role that he plays.
Sure. Yeah, I have bad TV taste too, but it's more because like I still watch like Melrose Place reruns from the 90s and like 90210, like all like My So-Called Life. You watch it now and you're like, oh, I don't know if some of these still hold up.
Yeah, if I start watching a show and it's current, if I'm interested in a scripted series and it's currently in production, that's not a good sign usually. For some reason, it doesn't end up working out for me. So I'm just like, I don't want to be the kiss of death. But I enjoy watching bulk. I bulk watch TV anyway. I think mostly as a defense mechanism now, because I feel like whenever I like something, then it doesn't last so long, and I'm like, oh, I was going to get invested in that.
Oh, I know.
Crazy
I loved
storyline.
I loved like Californication. That was such a good show. Yeah, I wasn't happy. I just met David Duchovny last week. He did a book signing in LA, and the writer of the X-Files came with him, and it was all these like X-Files fans, which I never watched, but I was a huge Californication fan, and so and I'm an author too, so I was like, I gotta go. I just have to
that's
say hello.
cool. Was it everything you wanted it to be?
No, he's exactly in real life as like he is on Californication. Like people would ask him questions, and he'd be like, yeah, I don't want to answer that. Next question. Like,
it was like my Whitney moment. No.
Yes, I know. And I was like, oh, that poor, like, and the poor person's like filming it, you know, like waiting for his response. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, oh, it was so funny. I think
did you make him just do the hand? At least can you do the hand model bit? Would he do that? Maybe, right? Wasn't he the hand model?
I don't know. I just was like, I'm an author too. And he was like, cool, what do you write? You know, just brief conversation. Like he was fine, but you could tell.
You should have said, I don't want to answer that.
I know, that's a stupid question. But I think book signings are exhausting too, because it's just like hundreds of people, output, you know. Output. Yeah, I'm sure he was probably just like tired, but yeah, on top of funny.
A book, that's writing the book is output itself. So then there's more output on output.
I know.
And cameras there to capture it all. Well, this is awesome. Thank you so much for this in this space, and I love this topic.
I know.
What a cool way back into the 90s.
I'm glad we didn't teleported.
Yeah, I dig it.
Teleported today. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap?
Much. So we'll have to come back and continue the convo.
I will always do a part 2. Well, thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Vinnie Potestivo is his and I have a podcast, is his podcast, and your media company is VPE Talent, right?
Yeah. You can find us at vpetalent.com.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. And you can find him. I will put all the social media links and everything when I post today's show. And so everybody can find him there, and I will send you a copy of it too.
I'm excited. Thank you.
I know. Thanks so much for coming on. All right. I will talk to you soon.
Yes, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.